putting horns on the helmet. And so what you've got to do is cut them so they curve with the helmet. I'm using a very rudimentary process. So I'm holding up a square one to the side of the helmet. You know, I've dotted where I want each one. I'm holding it up, and I'm just kind of tracing that curve best I can from the helmet to the horn. And then I cut it on the bandsaw. Now, if you have just a hobby knife, that'll work too. I have a bandsaw. I'm going to use it because it's quicker. And so then I cut it, and I hold it up there and, you know, see where my gaps are, because I want these things to be more or less vertical, you know, a little bit of kick out. But, you know, if they're out this far or they're in, I need to adjust it. So based on that, holding it up there where I think it should be, I look at the gap. If there's, you know, a bigger gap at the bottom than the top, then I need to cut the top. If there's a bigger gap at the top as opposed to the bottom, well, I need to cut the bottom. You just kind of figure that out. I've gotten lucky in a couple to where I cut them and they fit perfectly. Let's see, let me see. I've numbered each of these. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how many I've done so far. And that just allows me to quickly pick up which one fits to which space, because I've not made this helmet perfectly. It curves differently depending on where you are. So this allows me to quickly pick up which one goes where. I know this one goes here. I've dotted where each one goes, so I know to put the point at the dot. And look at how tight that gap is. This one I did on the first pass. It's the only one I've managed to get right on the first pass. That is a really good gap. And the nice thing is foam, it'll compact. So once you contact cement, you can kind of press it in place, and it's going to be really good. And to figure out where I needed each horn, I think this is called a seamstress ruler. I don't know. It's a flexible ruler. If you're doing costumes, it is absolutely mandatory, because if you have like your typical metal, you know, building ruler, this thing, you can't do curves around this. It's hard to do material around this. So I started from the dead center of the front, put the edge at the dead center of the front, measured to the dead center of the back. Got 14 inches. Measure the other side, 14 inches. That is very good, because that means I did each side symmetrical, which is always nice. And so I wanted 8 horns, so that is, see, 14 inches divided by 4, which is 3.66, which I just made 3 5/8 because that's close enough, and I don't want to get that screwed with it. And so measuring with this ruler, right at kind of where the starts to the dome, I measured 3 5/8. I put a dot on 3 5/8 every spot, with a dot at the front and the back, dead center. That's where I know to put my horns, and this is very helpful for that. So that's why these dots here, they are where the horns go, and I'm just cutting each horn. And I did lay out my horns, the ones with the best to the ones that needed a little bit of work, because some of these, they're a little rough. Like this back, the way I glued it is not completely flat. Some of them, the horn twists a little bit. So I wanted my best looking ones in the front, because that's what we're going to see first. In the back, not quite as important. Another thing to do is that these edges were really small to them. So where it's these really thin, almost paper thin edges, I'm taking the razor blade, I'm just slicing them off. Because that attention to detail is going to help your prop look better. It's going to help paint, because you know this little thin piece, if you paint it, well, paint is going to flake off of it as you hit it or touch it. So it's just so thin, so flexible, the paint won't stick to it. So it's always the details. You want your gaps nice and tight. I mean, foam, you can work that a little bit to hide some gaps, but if you get it right the first time, before you start gluing it, it's going to make it much easier. And definitely label these things, because if you don't label them, you're going to mix them up and then the curves won't match, and you create a mess. This is all about saving time, being quick, being efficient, and getting it done. So this one has just a bit of an edge on it, so I'm just laying that flat. I'm just cutting it off. See, my blade's got a little bit dull. That little edge, that makes a nice crisp corner. You can see up here, it gets really nasty up there. Just not, didn't glue on very well. I'm just cutting. Again, my blade is not super good, but cut that edge off, you know, nice, flat, smooth edge, which is what you want. Cutting it on the bandsaw, so I don't know if you can see if there's a slight curve I've drawn here in pencil. Now, if I cut it like this, I'm not gonna get a straight cut because of an angle. So I need it, but I need it back parallel. I need this point up. Just use a piece of foam to help support it, because if you don't have something to support it, as soon as it puts in the bandsaw, the bandsaw's going to pull it down, and you're not getting a good cut, because you want this curve straight from front to back. You don't want it at an off angle. And just a little piece of foam there to help support it. Eyeball it, make sure it looks good. Close enough really is good enough. And that way you can run it through the bandsaw and cut that curve. And again, if you just have a razor blade or a hobby knife, you can just slice one side, slice the other, or try to go all the way through. Up to you. But bandsaw makes it easier, and if you've got one, definitely make it easier on yourself and use it. So I cut it a bit short just so I have room to maneuver. I don't want to try to cut it perfect and then I've screwed up, I need it short, and then the horn is too short. So you can see this one, line up, there's a bit of a gap, but if you fold it over, it's really good. What it is, there's a peak right here, and it's just peaking a little bit. So I just need to notch this just a hair so it can sit flat, because that really is a very good curve. I might could glue it and kind of press it into place, but I prefer to get as good of a fit as I can from the start. So what I need to do, I just need to run this curve, just bag it up a little bit more. Actually, I need to check the height, because this back one's a little bit taller than the rest of them. Oh, that's perfect. That is a little bit taller. Once I cut it, it will be, actually won't be any shorter, because I'm not cutting this way, I'm cutting this way. And the others I've shortened to be the right height, and this one will be a little bit taller than that, which is perfect. So I'm just going to cut that curve right. After I do that, notch that a little bit so it fits that peak a little bit, and this back one will be done. This helmet's really going to come alive once I get these horns on it. Check this out. That certainly adds a more menacing look. Now, these things are just attached with some painter's tape just so I kind of figure out placement and glue, but like I was saying. But it definitely adds a menacing look to this helmet. They might be a little taller than the reference pictures, but I love the height. I love how it looks. And man, a little bit of paint, a little bit of weathering. Oh man, I am loving this. Fix this one. So I try to, as I was cutting them, match angles, and I can tweak that a little bit with contact cement as I glue it, because there's a little bit of flex to it. That one does not want to stick. I'm really liking that. So I did cut all of these, the bases, on the bandsaw. If you don't have bandsaw, yes, you can use a hobby blade. I don't envy you for that. It is not easy. Bandsaw works so much better, but still. And the nice thing is with foam, you've got some flex to it. Oh, but that is looking good. Man, that just wants to annoy me. All in all, I need to tweak where they hit. You know, I can use this line from where the sides and the top meet as a reference where I want to hit that line. And I might hit it. I don't know. I mean, for some of them, it seems to work a little bit better to hit that line. And if you can cover up some of these seams, like this rear seam, this one is right on top of that. That's good. Some of these right here, cover seams, that definitely helps. The reference picture does have 10 horns, but when you look at the spacing of these, I couldn't fit any more in there. Just Eredin has a much bigger head than me, so I had to tweak that. But I like it a lot. The only downside thing I couldn't quite get is the way these fit in the corners. With Eredin's, they really fit very nice to this line against the skull. I just couldn't do that. There wasn't any way to make that happen. I'd have to just change too much, tweak too much, so I didn't do it. But man, this is looking good. It looks mean. It almost looks better. They're a little twisty, a little gnarled. It just gives it a mean look. Making some progress on the Curiass. I've taken a broad stroke at it to begin with, and then just kind of tightening up the details. I thought at first there was a raised collar. It's not. That is the Gambasone undershirt that has raised collar. I'm only working on one side. No reason to do both sides, because when I cut this out, I'll just fold it in half and I'll fold the sheet of paper in half and draw this half on it, and then you cut it, fold it, very easy. Tighten up the collar, tighten up around the arms. Figure out exactly where this hits underneath my armpit. Tighten up the back. Just kind of tighten everything up. I mean, overall, this was pretty close. Just a matter of getting these details right, making sure it kind of feels right where it hits. This shoulder slopes way too much, so I flattened out that angle. I just made sure it hits around my neck correctly. I need to figure out the undershirt, because that does have a raised collar that goes around it. It kind of has a split in it. That'll help hide my neck. Still, I almost want something that comes all the way up, but there's hair out the back, so that covers the back of my neck. But what do I do at the front and then the whole chin area? I need to work that out on the mask. That is not. I'm leaving that for later, because I don't quite know what to do yet. But I think this isn't a good spot. I just need to wonder, do I retrace it to put it on and make sure it's right? I feel like it's right. And you always kind of cheat these things. You can always add some banding or something to the edge if you need to, but I think it's in a good spot. You can just see, just tighten up things. This dipped a little low, so I fixed on this side, shoulder, everything. I think it's good. Of course, there's a lot of detailing on the front. There's like these ridges that come up. There's these rib bone structures that come up and kind of reach like fingers up in their space. Don't quite know how to do that yet. I'm thinking it might just be like I might just do kind of like a circular piece of foam and then just attach foam to it and kind of have it wrap, because that way that gives me the spacing and it'll follow the Curiass as it wraps around, curves my body, and then I can heat this up, curve it a little bit. It'll be flexible. That's good. I want it flexible, because if it's too rigid, it would just snap. And that's the great thing about this helmet. I've already hit it on a couple doorways. You know what? They're flexible. That's going to be fine, so nothing will snap or break or like knock my head back as I run into a doorway. And I still haven't figured out, I need some kind of straps. I'm thinking maybe just leather or maybe foam paint to look like leather to strap it here. Use Velcro. You know, you could use belt buckles and stuff. There's no reason. Velcro works fine. You can fake it, make it look like belt buckles, just Velcros. There are some like straps that come down. Logically and physicality, they make no sense. The way they strap, I mean, I think it's to strap the armor down to you. But the way these things work, I don't see what you're actually strapping to. Whether I do that, I don't know. I haven't figured out the undershirt yet. Right now I'm thinking maybe I take like a t-shirt or long sleeve shirt and just build it with some leather panels just to mimic the panels look like. Because I don't want foam panels too. You know, I need a little bit of range of movement. Maybe do a leather collar because it'll be stiff enough to where it will keep its shape. It'll look kind of like an armor panel. I mean, in a way, leather does offer some protection. That is the thought right now. I did cut out a new template because I didn't want to go into it with this template that's been pieced together. I want to make sure it was right. And as I was I make this template that fits perfect. And as I'm tracing, I'm like, you know what? This needs to be a little bigger, which were the shoulders. And I put it on the shoulders like, yeah, okay, I don't know why I went off the template. When I strayed from the template I created, so I turned the shoulders back down. I think this works really well. I do think, I wish it came in a little further here, but it would just severely restrict my range of movement where my arms would just be like this, be like kind of like a T-Rex thing going on. So I need that range where I can grab stuff in front of me. Yeah, I think this is set. It's a little tough to get over my head, which is good because I want it as close to my neck as possible. I mean, this seems really good. I think this is it. Now it is time to trace this thing. And you also figure out many things about it. But the basis is here. Next, I'll start doing the ribs on it. That'll be craft foam. And yeah, like there's a small like flat ribs on it, like this striping across. That'll be craft foam. And there's actual rib spike structures. Those will be foam. And hopefully they work out. I think it would be cool. I need to figure out the shape of those. But yeah, this is it, man. I want to do this. Behind on getting this done because my computer died. It's dead. It was an older computer. You know, I was hoping it would chug along a little bit longer, and of course, it died. It's not good. I like my computer. I'm a little mad at it right now, but now I have to make an open decision. I think I can piece this one together, get a little bit more time out of it, because I have a computer almost identical to it, and the power supply went out on this. I think the one today, I'm guessing motherboard. It was definitely a hardware issue that Windows told me it's unrepairable. They tried multiple times and kept trying to try it again, do it again. Doesn't matter. Doesn't make a difference. So, do I buy a pre-made computer? I've done that in the past. Do I build my computer? Just did that recently. I like the idea, and I feel like you get a little bit more bang for your buck. You get some nicer components. For the time being, I'm just going to try to put together the two computers I have, combine them into one old computer. I mean, they're both old. Combine them into one old computer. And as I decide, do I pre-build or build my own? I'm really leaning towards build my own because I did that. That's fun. I always wanted to do it. Did it. Fun. I recommend it. Not as difficult as you think it'd be. So I think that's it. But I need to figure out what components do I need based on what I do. Anyway, let's cut this thing. So on the front of the Curiass, you've got this kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a bone type thing. And you got these pieces that curve over it. And so I cut these individually. I meant to cut long strips and cut off the corners on the bandsaw. I forgot, cut them all out individually. But I've got a method that's working pretty well. The part I want to cut, I'm putting on the cutting board. I'm just cutting mat. And I'm just cutting the corners out. I'm not being super careful about it. I will put these on the belt sander. But having it on the cutting mat makes it a little easier to cut. So we're trying to cut up here. It wants to move around a little bit. This gives it a nice solid base as you cut. And so I'm cutting all corners, all edges. And even if I didn't put this on the belt sander, they would look probably good enough. Cutting all edges gives it a very rounded look. And also I'm pressing down on it slightly, and I think that's kind of helping give it a curved look when I cut it. And so that looks pretty curved. And so the end result will be something that I'll kind of glue it down like that. And so that gives it the curved look. And the edges, I mean, there's going to be other stuff going on with this. So really that would be fine if I probably would on the belt sander and just get a little bit of an edge off. But they show up in pairs running down the sternum of the Curiass. And then you've got the spikes coming up across. But that's what they look like. And so this, I've cut most of them in a short amount of time. And ultimately this may have been a better way to do it. I just didn't want to cut these tiny pieces on the bandsaw because, you know, blades moving quickly, my fingers this close. That is not a situation I like. So since I already cut all these before I realized I was going to leave them in long strips and cut the corners off so I could keep my fingers a good distance away, well, I just went ahead and I cut all these little pieces. Didn't even think about it. Just knew I needed little pieces and knew I was going to get there. And this is what happened. Progress has been made on the Curiass. I've got this webbing. Now, in the reference photo, there is kind of a spike that goes from here and tapers to these rib spikes. I don't know if I'm going to put those on because I kind of like how this looks now. I don't know if I want to busy it up. This is the base for the spikes, the rib spikes that come across. Each one comes across kind of to a point. These will be the spikes. Yes, they look very pointy and sharp. I will round those over eventually. These guys, those go down this middle thing, kind of paired up all the way. That's why there's contact cement there. But it's making progress. It's looking like a thing. I mean, once we start weathering this and get some color on it, and you can see this looks like big shadows and gaps. It's not. It's just the marker that I had to lay everything out. Yeah, looking at it in the camera, I guess I will probably add these little tapers. They're wide here, taper down to each spike.